There's Ben. We've got 3. Need 1 more.
We got 4. I'm here too.
All right. Okay, let's go. Okay, Madam Clerk, are you ready to roll?
I'm ready to roll.
Okay, welcome everyone to the special session to hear public comment before closed session. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bates.
Present.
Councilmember Choi.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson. Absent. Councilmember Martinez. Absent. Councilmember Myrick. Absent. Councilmember Willis.
Here.
And Mayor Butt.
Here.
Okay, this evening during closed session, the council will discuss the following items. Conference with real property negotiator. Property is Point Melody, agency negotiators. Laura Snideman, negotiating parties. Winehaven Legacy, LLC, SunCal. Under negotiations are the price and terms of payment. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. San Francisco Baykeeper and West County Toxics Coalition versus City of Richmond. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. There's 1 case. Public employee appointment, title city attorney. Conference with labor negotiators, agency representatives, Jack Hughes, employee organizations, SEIU Local 1021, full-time unit, SEIU Local 1021, part-time unit, IFPTE Local 21, mid-level management unit, IFPTE Local 21, executive management unit, Richmond Police Officers Association, RPOA, Richmond Police Management Association, RPMA, IAFF Local 188, and Richmond Fire Management Association, RFMA. Before the 3 o'clock deadline, we received the following comment. 1 comment received urging the City Council to take no action regarding the sale of Point Melody to Winehaven LLC, SunCal, or any other entity until in-process litigation is settled and until an updated EIR addressing potentially 1,000 to 2,000 plus cars on sign as well as traveling Stenmark Drive daily. And we have two calls, and then we have 4 comments to read into the record, and each comment will receive up to 2 minutes. So we'll go ahead and go with the phone calls first. Yes.
Okay, I have Jeffrey Kilbreth on the line. Jeffrey, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm calling because I read the fiscal and economic impact analysis that the mayor sent out in his e-forum, and it said that it was a draft, so I'm sort of hoping that it's still being developed and extended and completed. But right now, I think that the analysis is incomplete, and that it's completely wrong to make any decisions and even to enter into negotiations, really, until certain kind of fundamental frameworks are established. In the summary of findings, I think there's 3 important points. One is that we've never had a development that at these price points before of this size in Richmond. So there's an inherent risk in that, and everyone should acknowledge that. Number 2 is in finding number 2, the methodology that's used establishes 2 points in time that are single points in time, half when 920 units are built, and then again when 2,040 units are built. Well, between 0 and 920, there's a long period of time, and we would be operating at a loss during that entire period of time. And so the whole issue of basically what we need is a 40 or 50-year cash flow analysis where revenues and expenses are established for each individual year, and we have cumulative losses, with summaries at maybe every 5 years to see where we stand in net. net, we're still behind until 15 years, and then we start making money or whatever the case may be. And then finally, I think that everyone should appreciate.
Your time has expired. Thank you, Jeffrey. My next caller is Gail McLaughlin. Gail, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council members. I'm urging you to stand in the public interest and not negotiate price and terms for Point Mulati. There are major concerns about the financial aspect of this project and how it will impact Richmond residents. The city's financial report is very inadequate. What is really needed is a year-by-year cash flow analysis. And the city's report paints a faulty, rosy picture. There are a lot of risks to this project. The city's report says in 15 years there will be, and it's a small $1.3 million gain, but the real answer is in the missing spreadsheets that show the cumulative losses until break even. And the real outcome is far closer to a $15 million loss or even up to a $25 million loss in 10 to 12 years. And that's because of the cost of a fire station and other costs to the general fund. Now, you just heard from Jeff Kilbreth, who's a former planning commissioner. I sent you an email with a link to his full analysis, but I want to read a couple sentences from his analysis, where he says, there is no analysis in the city's report of what happens if prices are 36% lower than planned, or if Richmond simply can't absorb 1,500 upper middle class homes, or if it takes 40 to 50 years to do so. Note that the Shea project has never sold more than 3 units per month, and Terminal 1 hasn't even broken ground yet. Taking 40 to 50 years for them all to sell, or simply never selling all of these Point Mulati 1,500 units, would likely increase the $15 million general fund shortfall to $25 million shortfall. And also the whole issue of the Mellow Ruth bonds, the citywide taxpayers could be on the hook for another $35 to $70 million in bond payments if even just 500 of the proposed homes don't get built and sold. We need an annual cash flow analysis.
Your time has expired.
Please
Thank you,
hold
Gail.
off on this negotiation.
That was my last caller.
Okay, we have some comments to read into the record.
This comment is from Michael Glickson. I'm writing to urge you to put a hold on your sale negotiations with SunCal. The development that SunCal has proposed is a bad deal for Richmond, and it is not what the citizens of Richmond want. The city's financial analysis of the SunCal project proves everything the Point Mulati Alliance has argued, and the Hatch financial analysis shows. This project, as planned, will cost Richmond taxpayers at least $5 million per year. Please closely review for yourselves the financial risk to the city. The proposed project violates the general plan and all the city's planning documents that guide the development of Point Mulati. Public access, active recreation, and protecting biodiversity and sacred cultural heritage sites are core elements in our general plan and all the city documents that guide the development of Point Mulati. Thank you for your consideration. This next comment is from Dorothy Gilbert. I write in shock and outrage at the latest attempt by SunCal to have their way with the Richmond citizens and their shifting designs on Point Mulati. From the first, this attempt to take possession of Point Mulati has been marked by chicanery and dishonesty. Decisions regarding Point Mulati were initially made by SunCal in a closed council session instead of a required public process and are thus illegal. Now, a planned area PA has been designated by SunCal that greatly distorts the previous understanding that the 70% of the area has to be open space. Open space of a sort it may be, but it is hardly 70%. What remains is not for us. It's very steep slope of the 400 to 500 hills behind Point Mulati, plus known toxic areas. Plus access, public access would be only available to the Bay Trail, and even that looks doubtful, as well as the interest is on land designated for private dwellings. The beach park, cherished by Richmond residents for many years, and like much the general area home to the valuable and rare plant species, will become a sewer for the complex. We now have an attempt to rush into the settlement agreement. SunCal is delaying the provision of project information to the Design Review Board. They hope to use the current settlement timeline to force a vote that goes their way, even though it does not give the DRW sufficient time to obtain a viable EIR. A decision would be made based on an incomplete and inadequate EIR used by SunCal. The settlement timeline has been changed already and can be changed again. It surely must be if a responsible decision is to be made. It has been said over and over by many people, the loss of this land to the public would be nothing less than a tragedy. Indeed, several tragedies. Point Mulati is, we all know, home to many historic treasures. It is a Ohlone land, still treasured by Ohlone people who wish to use it for ceremonies. It is the home of the old Chinese shrimp camp, the once famous Windhaven facility, and near the old whaling station. This next comment is from Lisa Park. I object that the city is negotiating the price and terms of the payment for public Ohlone land based on the terms and conditions of an illegal settlement deal that has not yet heard and judged in court. The city is negotiating a deal that amounts to gifting public Ohlone land without public or Ohlone consent from the profit of a failed casino developer, a tribe that has no connection to Point Mulati, and an out-of-town real estate developer at the expense of the Richmond public and taxpayer. The city's financial analysis of the SunCal project proves everything the Point Mulati Alliance has argued, and the Hatch financial analysis shows the project as planned will cost Richmond taxpayers at least $5 million per year. Please closely review for yourselves the financial risk to the city. The proposed project violates the general plan and all the city's planning documents that guide the development of Point Mulati. Public access, active recreation, and protecting biodiversity and Native American sacred heritage sites are core elements in our general plan and all the cities that guide the development of Point Mulati. Our final comment is from Jeanette Courts. I want to express my dismay. Excuse me, let me find my place here. I want to express my dismay, even my outrage, that the city is negotiating the price and terms of payment for public Ohlone land based on the terms and conditions of an illegal settlement deal that has not yet been heard and judged in court. It is in the public interest to be consistent with the general plan and other planning documents that guide the development of Point Mulati. We should instead make plans for a world-class regional park for Richmond youth and families, the region, and future generations. The East Bay Regional Park District has set aside over $4 million to turn the south watershed of Point Mulati into a regional park, sustainably develop the Windhaven Historic District, but please leave the environmentally sensitive south watershed undeveloped for the benefit of all Richmond residents and the residents of the Greater Bay Area. Please do not make the south watershed a private enclave for the wealthy, which will also turn the Point Mulati Beach Park into a sewer facility for these homes. How is this plan a socioeconomic justice plan? Richmond must focus on developing the inner part of the city. The planning department should put out a call for developers to come to Richmond to build affordable housing, provide commercial enterprises that would bring much needed money to Richmond's coffers and bring job opportunities. Richmond has plenty of empty, blighted lots that could be turned into the reality such as what I mentioned above. The Point Mulati plan is a plan that belongs back in the 1980s, 1990s. Most cities are building affordable housing near transportation amenities and where infrastructure already exists. These cities are creating thriving downtowns. Richmond's downtown is abysmal. I do hope you listen to your constituents. For some reason, you never do. Please do not be pressured by the developer and legal threats. If you vote to sell Point Mulati, you will be on the wrong side of history. You will be voting for something you will truly regret and will create a negative cash flow for the city for years to come. And that was our final comment for this item.
Okay, and for the record, Councilmember Myrick is present. And that was our last comment.
Okay, then we are adjourned to closed session. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Richmond City Council. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
The time is 7 o'clock. Vice Mayor Bates,
Present.
Councilmember Choi,
Here.
Councilmember Johnson,
Just in time.
Councilmember Martinez,
Here.
Councilmember Myrick, absent, Councilmember Willis,
Here.
and Mayor
Councilman
Buck.
Myrick is here.
Here.
Okay, for the record, Councilmember Myrick is here. Next on the agenda is statement of conflict of interest. Are there any?
I'm going to remove item G10 from the agenda tonight.
Okay, so we're under agenda review. Item
Oh, I'm
G10 is,
sorry. I'm sorry.
so there,
Jumped
there was a
the-
statement of conflict of interest. Okay, so next is agenda review. Item G10 has been removed. And I'm gonna withdraw item G17. And just for the record, the League of California Cities has confirmed that this will be a virtual meeting. The annual conference will be a virtual meeting, but I still want to get more information. So I'm going to bring that back in September.
Okay.
Are there any other items to be removed? Okay, hearing none. Item D is report from the city attorney of final decisions made during closed session.
Good evening. There were no final decisions made during closed session to report this evening.
Item E is a report from the city manager.
There is no report from me this evening.
Item F is open forum. Okay, and we received one comment before the 3 p.m. deadline, and that comment was in support of items G6 and G10 on the consent calendar. We have 4 callers, and we have 10 comments to read into the record. So we're gonna go to our callers first, and that each caller will have up to 2 minutes to address the council. Jesua, are you ready? Okay, we're gonna go to the comments.
This first comment is from Ana Gonzalez. I live in Richmond and I am an ACE member. I have 3 children and I've been very concerned about services being cut that would impact me and my family as well as city workers. My main concern is around health services, libraries, and traffic safety. The city must be advocates for health care and stopping the county from closing the hospital. We need you to be advocates for us, our children, and our city workers. Tom and members of the council realize that this is the time to utilize that money that's locked away for emergencies. We're in a crisis and you will not be able to fix it by slashing city workers in their paycheck from they desperately depend on to survive while their money is unavailable. Thank you for your time. This next comment is from Elsa Stevens. It is my personal opinion that furlough is just another word for partial layoff. The city workers who work the hardest and get paid the least, the folks we now call essential workers, they should not be asked yet again to sacrifice the most. With buying power that shrinks every year and the Bay Area cost of living going through the roof, most are not surviving. The city has record rainy day reserves. Now is the time to make it rain. Make it rain. Money for essential workers. They deserve it. This is go round. Let the folks who make 100, 200, 300,000 or more try their hands at sacrificing for the city of Richmond. Frontline workers who risk their lives for all of us on a daily basis are done. This next comment is from Christina Lorenzana, Richmond resident and ACE member. I am writing to you today because I have been very concerned with the decisions the council might end up making about the city budget. As someone who cares for an elderly person, I'm concerned that services for her might be slowed because of the lack of resources. We can't afford to take these resources away at the cost of also doing away with workers' salaries who are the worst paid. Please think about this decision in a manner that reflects your values as a council and as elected leaders. Your responsibility is to serve the community, not take away what we depend on to thrive as a community. This next comment is from Eliza Castro. I'm a Richmond resident, and in many years of living here and raising my family, I couldn't be more thankful for the programs my children were a part of in the city of Richmond. My oldest daughter has developed social skills thanks to her opportunity to volunteer at the city events. I have my younger ones that like to go to the library. I believe that there is more that this city could do for its community and its workers. Put your priority with your workers. This next comment is from Astrid Jerez. I'm a Richmond resident and I write to you all, members of the council, in solidarity with SEIU city workers. I have concerns with the pandemic that we are under. One of the biggest concerns of mine is city services like the libraries and health services. As a senior, I depend on services that the city provides. I depend on the library and would like for it to not close. Recreation centers and parks are what makes a community. If we do not look for other ways to balance the budget, we will dig the community into a deeper hole that can be avoided if the city uses the resources it has. We can secure the safety of our streets, the access to libraries and safe parks. We still have to go on walks and we still need city workers. Please give them the respect they deserve. Thank you. Our next comment is from Juan Gutierrez. Hello, members of the council. I think we have the best city in the Bay Area, and we need the council to reflect the values of our community when deciding how to manage city business. I'm not a city worker, but I know that it's like what it's like to not have consistent work. If the city has the power to use the money from the reserves, 20 million is more than enough to figure out some numbers, but don't mess with people's work and means to put food on the table while maintaining our community safe and beautiful. This next comment is from Fernando Avalos. I'm an ACE member and Richmond resident, and today I'm showing my support for our city workers. We depend on their services to the community to make sure that we have a safe city for our children, our seniors, and for everybody. Please don't hesitate to use the money for emergencies that you have. We are in a pandemic that our generation has never seen before, and you all are responsible for making responsible decisions. Thank you for doing your job. Please let the SEIU workers do theirs. This next comment is from Jose Palma. Hello, members of the City Council. I live in Richmond, and I'm afraid for what is happening now with the COVID pandemic. I fear what is going to happen to renters and tenants, what will happen to workers who are essential to the city of Richmond. Some of us, like others, like myself, have lost our jobs because we had no choice. Our employers laid us off. You all have a responsibility to do the right by us, the community, and your workers. No cuts, no furloughs. Please do right. This next comment is from Raimundo Venegas. I'm a Richmond resident and a member of ACE. I have no idea why the city is sitting on $20 million that can be used in this time of emergency. What are you waiting for? We need this money now so you don't have to do the unthinkable, which is cutting salaries from your workers and starving the community of services that we desperately need. The disrespect is shameful. I expect more from all of you. And the final comment is from Edith Pastrano, lifelong Richmond resident. This council can and needs to do more. City workers are making sure that our city literally doesn't crumble. I have no idea what the city was holding out on 20 million that can be used effective immediately, but now I know, thanks to the workers. What you all don't realize is the city workers have back up, and we are not going to sit still and watch you bully them. Every single one of you is tasked to serve us. Listen to your constituents and show some respect to your workers. Show some respect, period. And that was our final comment.
And now we'll go to our callers.
Okay, my first caller is Jovanka Beckles. Jovanka, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Okay, thank you. Jovanka Beckles, I'm a Richmond resident. People, both private and public entities, are experiencing unprecedented hardship. Some people are experiencing hardship more so than others. Those folks tend to be the lowest paid and always essential workers for essential services that our community needs. That our community needs to function. Workers like those those members of the SEIU 10 to 1. Now is not the time to inflict further damages. Now is the time, however, to protect those workers and those essential services. Now is the time to use those emergency funds. Those funds that are there for times such as these, because it isn't just raining right now, it's storming. So I say, no cuts, no layoffs, no furloughs. But if cuts are necessary, then cut from the top. Or better yet, use the rainy day funds that are there for exactly these raining, storming. Thank you.
Thank you. My next caller is Ilana Clark. Ilana, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Now,
Yes, go ahead.
Jovanka speaking.
No, you can go ahead and start. That's delayed.
Okay. Now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Alana Clark. I'm a Richmond resident. I would like to ask the City Council, as you contemplate tonight's agenda, I want to remind you that just a few short weeks ago, you approved a rent program fee increase, the largest of which was on an increase on affordable housing. Between last year and this year, the total rent program fee for affordable housing came to a 150% increase, from $50 to $124 per unit. None of this fee may be passed through to renters, and the number of affordable housing units in Richmond has decreased by thousands since this program began. So really think before you start charging businesses, especially housing, because we are already charged a lot. I'm a small housing provider in Richmond, and I will be speaking to you again this evening. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. My next caller is Gail McLaughlin. Gail, are you there?
Yes,
Okay, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I want to say that I have heard that the city has said that furloughs are remaining in the budget, even after the City Council passed a budget with the provision that furloughs would be removed. There are other ways to balance the budget than doing furloughs, which are partial layoffs. The city can take from the reserves, as cities across the nation are doing. We likely will be struggling from repeated recessions and perhaps repeated pandemics. We need not suffer also from austerity in our city budget. Our budget should reflect our values. And for me, the value of city government is serving our residents. Our city workers are struggling to make ends meet. And right now, lower paid workers cannot make ends meet. City workers need to pay the rent, pay for food, pay for all their other expenses. And we all know how expensive it is in the Bay Area. Furloughs hurt our community as well. When we don't have as many workers on board every single day, the community feels the pain. I hear it all the time from people saying the city needs to do more, not less. How can the city do more when they are cutting hours for frontline workers? Pass a budget that makes Richmond a place where everyone can thrive, not just the rich and wealthy. Let's use our we have 20 million in reserves. Let's use more of those. So, as so many other cities are doing, while we bring in more revenue from sources like Prop 15, which will bring in much new revenue to the city of Richmond, we should all be working hard to get Prop 15 passed. So let's bring in new revenue. In the meantime, let's use our reserves, which I know we've used some, but we could use more. Let's keep our staff fully on board so our community and our city workers can all thrive together. This is what a democratic, people-first government looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. My next caller is Mike Parker. Mike, are you ready to speak?
Yes,
Okay, you have 2 minutes. You can go ahead and start.
thank you. As the previous speaker said, on at the June 30th meeting, the council voted to not have any furloughs on the table. That is, that staff was not to ask the unions for furloughs, that they had to find other ways of making cuts in order to make the budget balance. Now, I don't know how it happened, since I don't recall any open session vote which changed this, but apparently the city is now pressing the unions for option C, which the council clearly opposed on June 30th. I don't know how that can happen without a vote in open session, and I would ask you to look at that. The Richmond Progressive Alliance opposes any solution that requires furloughs or wage cuts from the low-wage workers in the city. I want to make it clear, it's not that we think that the other workers are making too much money. It's that when we have to make sacrifices, we have to do them fairly, and the people who have the most money and have the biggest income have the best chance of having the cushion to be able to survive the temporary situation. So I ask that you follow that open session vote, get the furloughs off the table, that you find other ways, such as cutting overtime or asking the high-paid workers in the city to make wage or furlough sacrifices. Thank you.
Thank you. And my last caller is Tarnell Abbott. Tarnell, are you ready to speak? Tarnell?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. My name is Tarnell Abbott. I'm a Richmond resident. And I have two items I'd like to tell you about or talk to you about. One is Point Melody, which you keep voting on or hearing about in closed session. And I just want to say that you need to quit bowing down and caving in to the developer. And remember, this is public property and it deserves a public process. And every public process has had, or every time the public has had an opportunity to speak, they have said very clearly they don't want a major housing development on that land. It is precious, valuable land. So please bear that in mind and do something different. Now, in terms of the other thing, I will not belabor too much because you've heard from everybody else, but your public who elected you deserves your respect. The respect you give the public is you provide them with services. When you furlough or lay off or partially lay off frontline staff, not only are you disrespecting the staff, you're disrespecting your public. Your job is to take care of us and give us the services that we pay for. And when you decide to do furloughs and do a partial layoff or a cut, essentially, of frontline staff, we're not going to get the services that we pay for and deserve. So find a way around that one. You know what to do. I've given you more than one suggestion about how you can fix the budget gap. And don't let city staff members push you around. It's your job to do the budget. It's your job to know what the contracts are, and don't violate the contract for SEIU or anybody else. You know, you've got ways you can do this that will not get you into trouble. And one of them is using
Your
the
time has
reserve.
expired. Thank you, Tarnell. Okay, and that was my last caller.
What's the last caller?
Yes.
Last comment, Mayor. Would you like to move on to the next item?
Okay, call the next item.
Next item is the consent calendar. We need a motion to approve. Item G10 has been removed and item G17 has been withdrawn.
So moved.
Okay, I need a second. I need a second.
Second.
Okay,
The second was by Councilmember Martinez.
Correct.
Vice Mayor Bates,
Beat him to the punch.
Yes.
Councilmember Choi,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Myrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
and Mayor Butt.
yes,
The vote is unanimous. All right, our next item is item H1. Item H1 is to adopt a resolution ratifying the Director of Emergency Services' fourth supplemental order by extending timelines for certain eviction issues related to the COVID-19 until the City Council takes an action to extend the order to a date certain, or in the alternative, decline to ratify and extend the order, thereby terminating the order and allowing County Order Ordinance Number 2020-20 to apply in its entirety to the City of Richmond.
Good evening, council members. This is Lena Velasco, Community Development Director. I'm joined this evening with Shannon Moore from the City Attorney's Office, who will be leading the presentation as they've been assisting us in this effort.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm just going to briefly run through a PowerPoint presentation to provide a little bit more background and context to inform your decision tonight. So you really have two options to consider, and I'll talk about the options now, but then we can go and I'll talk more about kind of background about our eviction moratorium, as well as the Contra Costa County's most recent ordinance and their eviction moratorium terms. So the first option would be to adopt a resolution ratifying our order and extend the timeline of the order to September 30th. And the second would be to decline to ratify our order, thereby terminating our order and allowing the county's ordinance to govern. So there've been several iterations or several additions to this order. I think you all remember that the city manager, who is the director of emergency services, issued the first supplemental order declaring a temporary moratorium on evictions, and non-payment of rent for residential tenants impacted by COVID-19. And there have been a second supplemental order that added additional protections for commercial tenants, as well as placed a moratorium on residential rent increases. And then there was a third order that extended these timelines through July 15th to be in line with the county timelines. And now we're at the fourth supplemental order, where the city manager, the director of emergency services, has extended the timelines for certain eviction issues that I'll get into in a moment. And I think it's up to you all tonight to decide whether you want to extend it even further or terminate it and let the county ordinance govern. Let me add that when the director of emergency services issued the fourth supplemental order on July 14th, the county also approved their ordinance 2020-20, which extended the county's eviction moratorium in certain terms around that to September 30th to be in line with the governor's executive order on this matter, which is N71-20, which extends, it allows local governments to enact their own residential and commercial eviction moratoriums through September 30th. So I'll quickly run through, I'm sure you've all heard this before, but our current order and the provisions within that order, so you kind of understand the key terms. Okay, so the first one is that our order currently states that an owner is prohibited from evicting a commercial and a residential tenant if they're unable to pay rent due to the financial impacts of COVID-19 or for no fault eviction, unless it's necessary for the health and safety of tenants, neighbors, or landlords. Under our order, the city's order, we have a 12-month grace period to pay the remaining balance of rent due. We also have a moratorium on residential rent increases that would expire once our order expires. And so those are the kind of the key terms of our order. Whereas in the county's order, they also have a prohibition on residential and commercial evictions, but the commercial evictions are limited to small business and nonprofits. There are also similar no-fault evictions for residential and commercial, but it's through September 30th. So that's date certain. And let me clarify one thing. In the agenda report, it stated that the county's grace period was 6 months, and that was an error in drafting, and it should be 4 months. So just to clarify, the county's grace period is 4 months. So from the date of September 30th and when the county's ordinance expires, a tenant has 4 months up until January 31st to pay all past rent due. They also have a similar moratorium on residential rent increases through September 30th. So just to kind of go over broad brush strokes, kind of the three key differences between the city's order and the county's ordinance are the following. So under the city order, there's no allowance for an owner to evict a tenant because the owner wants to move in or a family member wants to move in. Under the county's order, owner move-in or owner's immediate family move-in is permitted. Under the city order, the moratorium on evictions for commercial properties applies to all commercial properties. And the county, it's nonprofits and small businesses. And finally, the grace period, in our order, it's 12 months after the expiration of the order. And in the counties, it's 4 months after it's September 30th. So it's January 31st. So I know that was a lot of information packed into a short period, but we just wanted to give you a better understanding of kind of what potentially two options are tonight for you. And one would be to extend our order and extend that order to be in line with the county's order and the executive order of September 30th. I'll tell you, I didn't include it in these in the presentation materials, but if you look on the last page of the agenda report, there's a chart that kind of highlights what other cities are doing, and quite a few cities, if not most, that have not let their eviction moratorium lapse, have tied their moratorium to the September 30th date. So that's one. So option one is we adopt the fourth order and tie it to September 30th. Option two is to decline to ratify our fourth supplemental order and have it terminate, and then allow the county's ordinance to govern. And if we allow our order to lapse, the city of Richmond tenants everyone in the city of Richmond will be bound by the county's ordinance. So with that, I think I turn it back over. I don't know if anyone has questions or.
Okay, yeah, are you ready for questions? Council members have questions? I can't see everybody, so.
So I think if you could take the presentation down, the council can see each other a little better.
Yeah.
Got one quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
So if we did not ratify the city ordinance, that 12 months that tenants currently have, that would go away. Is my understanding of that? Okay, so they would still have 12 months at the end.
They would be protected by the 12-month period up until this point for any rent paid from this point and prior while this order was in effect. But okay. I think the county's order says that it applies except that if a governing body of the city has an ordinance or has a regulation that governs the subject matter of this ordinance, then the city ordinance supersedes. So I think once the city's ordinance lapses, the county's protections would apply from that point going forward.
Well, I guess that doesn't answer my question though, because the county's protections is 4 months, our protections are 12 months. Right. So are we saying that it would then go down to 4 months?
Yes.
Okay, right. That's what I need to understand.
The question?
I got a question. In reading some documents, it's my understanding there are legal actions that have been filed against certain cities throughout at least California, maybe the nation, as it relates to liability. Landlords who are not getting reimbursed for their rent are collectively maybe joining in a class action lawsuit. Can you address that from what is legally going on out there in big America?
Do you want me to take that, or you're?
You can go ahead, sure, Jennifer.
No, it's okay. It's okay, Rich. I'll go.
Just there have been. I know that I'm aware of some litigation that has been filed in Los Angeles by the apartment association. I think that there's a realtor, a real estate agent that has filed litigation in Antioch as well.
Okay. The second question is, to avoid putting the city in a libelous situation, what would be the recommendation from our legal staff and the city manager, a course of action that this council should proceed with?
I think that, it's really a policy decision, the council. As I noted, there is litigation that has been filed by a few different entities against against cities that have enacted some protections, but it's, you know, those are in the early stages of litigation. So a lot of cities have also adopted such protections. I do think if the county order, the county has adopted some protections that apply as noted in the presentation. And if the city doesn't enact any regulation from this point going forward, those protections would still apply to protect tenants.
Well, let me be more specific. If we adopt a different ordinance, then we become potentially liable. But if we adopt the county ordinance, then the county become liable. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, we don't even have to adopt the county ordinance. It would by its own terms to incorporate it into the incorporated city without the city needing to take action.
I didn't hear that. It's sort of a distortion of the voice. I don't know if all the council members can hear what was said.
I didn't hear that.
Is that better?
You've got an echo. Have you got two devices on or something?
Yes. Hold on.
I think what Rachel is trying to say, I think what Rachel is trying to say is that by following the county's order, I mean, there's still litigation risk, but I think it's minimized, it's lessened if the county's ordinance is followed, but there's still risk, you know, in either way.
But it's less risk with the county is what you're saying.
Rachel, would you agree with that?
So let me try and help for just a minute and clarify a couple of different issues. The first issue that I want to clarify in response to Councilmember Myrick's question, I'm not sure we were exactly clear earlier. If the city's ordinance is allowed to lapse and the county's order applies to us, from today going forward, people would have 12 months still to pay back any rent that was accumulated up until this point. If there is rent that accumulates from today going forward, then for that period of non-payment, they would have 4 months from whenever that order stops. So it is a little bit confusing, but I think it's an important distinction in that everybody in Richmond, even if we go under the county's order today, everybody in Richmond still has 12 months to pay back any rent that they were not able to pay up until this point. It changes going forward if we fall under the county ordinance. And then I think the question was asked earlier, you know, what is the staff recommendation? And so you all have realized that I have chosen to just extend this order and you have ratified it along the way. We are at a point where I no longer feel comfortable with that, given a whole bunch of different considerations, and that we haven't found a good way to really help landlords. There's a whole bunch of different considerations that come into play, in addition to the overall concept of risk management. So therefore, that is why we are bringing this to the council at this time for the policy decision, which I think is a higher level decision than a city manager should be making.
Other questions? Ben?
Yeah, Shannon basically presented kind of an option A and an option B. Is there also the option is there something in between? Is there a possibility of extending with amendments?
What type of amendments would you be interested in? Because we would essentially need to extend some version this evening to kind of keep it open and continue to modify. You all have already modified it several different times along the way, and we can continue to do that if we keep it in effect. And so we'd be, I think before Shannon can give you a clear answer, we would need to know more specifically what you're interested in.
Well, I'm kind of opening up to my colleagues, but in terms of, for like one thing that comes to mind would be perhaps putting some kind of, as the county does, putting some kind of caveat on commercial businesses the small business caveat, that sounds fairly sensible, and I think it might be popular with many of my colleagues. I mean, in a sense, we wouldn't have to ratify that because it exists along, but I would like to get some legal advice on how we would do that if we were to put an amendment like that would change the classification on small businesses. Also, how do they define small businesses? This is also kind of a question that popped up during Shannon's presentation for me. The other one would be, of course, the big one is the 12 months, because if we were to do it now, it would go until July of next year. If we were to extend the moratorium, it would serve us to figure out a good length of time that it would be would end using that September 30th start date to be, whether it be 9 months, something like that, but that would be open to discussion. So these are the kind of things I'm thinking of. I'm expecting my colleagues to bring forth amendments that they feel are important.
Other questions? Comments? Got a motion?
Don't we still have public comment?
We have one comment.
I'm sorry. Okay.
This public comment is from Sarah Cantor. I support the motion to extend the eviction moratorium. This is an important way to support our residents. Ensuring that people stay housed is a vital part of public safety. And that was our final comment.
Okay, now I guess we're ready for a motion. Councilmember Johnson, you got your hand up, I see.
No, yeah, I just had a comment, and I just had to make sure that this was said. I think this is very, and this is no fault of the city manager or the county. I just think this is silly that we're talking about like ending this when it's crazy. Even the president just said that this pandemic is going to get worse and is encouraging people to wear face masks. So the idea that people are going to go back to work and be able to like this is all going to be over by September 30th, I think it's cute. We're going to end up here in a few more weeks, extending whatever we do. So I just wanted to get that out there. Like, I applaud the city manager for trying to make sure that, you're keeping the city legally and policy-wise safe, but this pandemic isn't going, we can't legislate the end of a pandemic. And so whatever we do, I just want everybody to know, like, we're going to have to revisit this. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to say that.
Councilor Willis.
Well, yeah, actually, to Councilmember Johnson's point, I mean, there was a push to extend this longer because we've heard projections that we could be in this for a very long time. But even the county's justification, and we're in line with the county at this point, was they didn't want to go past September 30th because they just wanted to follow with the state's recommendation. And the state's recommendation is September 30th. But, local municipalities also have authorization to go as further as we want to. I think we offer a lot more protections because we still got a lot of people out of work. We still know there are people accumulating debt who haven't been able to pay rent. There's currently state legislation trying to figure out how to address that for both tenants and property owners, but we need to see where that's going to go or how people actually feel about that. But with that being said, I'll make a motion to go with option 1 to ratify and extend our moratorium to the September 30th date.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Martinez, is that right?
No, I've missed most of this conversation because the computer's been freezing up.
It was a second from me.
Yeah, the motion is to extend it till September 30th, our eviction moratorium.
Pandemic is going to be what determines the policy that's necessary. And since we don't know how the pandemic's going to play out, especially since we don't know how people are going to continue reacting to it, it's, I think,
we lost you again, Councilor Martinez.
Mayor, but I'd just like to read
So,
into the record.
What?
I'd like to read into the record that by 3 o'clock today, we did receive 2 comments in support of the item, 1 comment in opposition of the item. Sorry, I didn't read that earlier.
Okay. Councilor Martinez, we lost you about halfway through that. You want to go back and finish it up?
yeah, that's what it's been like for me during this entire session. What I'm trying to say is that the virus is going to determine what policies are most effective for the situation. And it's easier to pull a policy back than it is to push it forward. So I think we need to have as much time as possible. And we also need to push our electeds up higher to do what needs to be done, which is to have a moratorium on rents and mortgages. That's the only policy that's going to actually make things work. Otherwise, we're all going to come crashing down. So until that happens, I want to protect as many people as possible, and that would call for an extension of what we have.
So is that a second of Councilor Willis's motion?
I already seconded it.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to make a substitute motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I agree with my colleague, Councilmember Martinez. You just can't give relief to the renters without demanding that Congress and the state legislature provide some relief to the mortgage holders and especially the landlords. So my motion would be that we would support the county's measure because it provides less liability to cities. And at the same time that we would direct the county and our state legislatures and our congressional legislators to proceed with some kind of relief action for the landlords. So that would be my substitute motion.
Is there a second to that motion? Well, I will second it, and the reason is that all of our COVID-19 related health information and advisories comes from the county. They are the only ones empowered to impose those requirements, and they're on top of it. And I think that instead of every city going their own way, that we should join the other cities in Contra Costa County, let the county take the lead, and not try to forge our own way here. So,
can I do a quick discussion on the substitute motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, the main difference, which is why I will not be supporting it, is one, the county gives people 4 months of recovery versus we have a year. The county also requires adequate documentation on how you've been impacted by COVID-19, and they can do a termination of tenancy as well, whereas ours does not. So I feel like we'll be opening up a lot of loopholes, and we already have had reports come from the rent program on how folks were still pushing for evictions even after we adopted our rent moratorium. And so I will not be supporting the substitute motion.
Well, we're also the only city in the county that has rent control and just cause. So we have a lot of protections against, unlawful terminations that the rest of the county doesn't have already. One question I had maybe for Shannon, where is the Judicial Council of California on their moratorium? Well, they're not their moratorium, but yeah, I guess you'd call it a moratorium on eviction procedures. Are they, do you know where they are?
I don't know the updated. I know that they on April 6th, they adopted emergency rules, but I can look that up now if you'd like. I don't know the answer but I can look it up.
I think they still have a moratorium on evictions, and I believe they're being challenged, legally also. But anyway, any other discussion before we vote? Okay, let's vote on the substitute motion first, Madam Clerk.
Vice Mayor Bates,
Yes.
Councilmember Choi,
No.
Councilmember Johnson,
No.
Councilmember Martinez,
No.
Councilmember Myrick,
Nope.
Councilmember Willis,
No.
and Mayor Butt.
Yes.
The motion fails with Vice Mayor Bates and Mayor Butt voting yes. Now with the original motion, Vice Mayor Bates,
No.
Councilmember Choi,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Myrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
and Mayor Butt.
Excuse me, no.
The motion passes with Vice Mayor Bates and Mayor Butt voting no.
Okay, next item.
Item I1, to review and provide direction on the draft resolution for the November 3rd, 2020 ballot, which would amend the city's business tax structure to authorize the city to tax the businesses based on a range from 0.075% to 1.395% of gross receipts instead of charging based on the number of employees. The new new methodology would charge the highest rates of businesses with the most gross revenue, with exemptions for small businesses with gross receipts under $250,000, and is estimated to generate $4.9 million in additional revenue until ended by voters. Based on City Council's feedback, staff will return with the final proposed ballot measure on the July 28, 2020 City Council meeting.
All right. Wow. Can everyone hear me? Is it better?
You're good. You're good now.
Okay, good. So good evening, Mayor Butt, Vice Mayor Bates, and council members. My name is LaShonda White, and I am the acting Deputy City Manager for Internal Services. A few months ago, in an effort to increase revenues and help address the city's structurally unbalanced budget, the city had the opportunity to partner with a coalition called Lift Up Richmond to explore the feasibility of placing revenue measures on the November 2020 ballot. The coalition, which you will hear more about, consists of Local 1021, RPOA, Local 21, as well as Local 188, RISE, ACE, APIN, and a number of other community and labor advocates. Tonight, you will hear an update on the polling that took place in June of 2020 from consulting firms Telegraph and FM3, as well as a presentation from city staff on the gross receipts tax ballot that is being proposed for the November 2020 ballot. Before we begin the presentation, I would like to take time to thank Lift Up Richmond for their work in moving this item forward, as well as Antonio Manuelos, account manager in finance, who worked on the staff report and served as a liaison with Lift Up Richmond, and James Atencio, senior city attorney who worked on the ordinance. With that, I would like to introduce Jim Ross, the political consultant that Lift Up Richmond hired from Telegraph Consulting Firm.
Thank you very much. And just before we get started, I wanted to thank LaShonda, Antonio, and James for their hard work. We have worked with a lot of cities on these things, and their cooperation and hard work was just extraordinary, and we really appreciate it from the group. As LaShonda said, our firm was hired by the coalition that came together to find new revenue sources or options for the city of Richmond. And we have worked with them. We started with 8 different tax proposals. We went through and looked at, how much money they would raise, the political issues, those types of things, and came up with kind of 3 that seemed to be the best to test, which we decided to, the coalition raised the money and put a poll into the field and tested those. Based on the polling that Lucia is going to go through and the ability to raise significant revenue, Our coalition is supporting a progressive gross receipts tax. Many cities in California have already have a progressive gross receipts tax. San Francisco just moved forward to put a revised one in front of its voters, for this November. And Oakland City Council has passed an ordinance moving forward with a progressive gross receipts tax, and will ask its voters to approve the rates on that in 2022. This proposal, as it's written, would allow the city council to adjust rates, so they won't be locked in. You can lower them as needed. Really, this ballot measure or a ballot measure gives you the authority to kind of set rates and change that as you need to now with under Prop 13. One last thing just to point out before I hand it over to Lucia is that this measure is very viable. Our firm ran the tax in 2018 for the real estate transfer, and this tax actually polls better than it did at a similar point. So, this is something that if you choose to move forward with it, we know the coalition is committed to running a really aggressive campaign, and we think that it could pass and really help the city of Richmond. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lucia.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. My name is Lucia Del Pupo. I'm a senior researcher with FM3 Research, and I'm going to be walking you through the results of the poll that we conducted in mid to late June. We spoke to just over 400 voters likely to cast a ballot in November 2020. We did the interviews online and via phone, and it's helpful when looking at the data to keep in mind that the margin of error for the whole sample is about 5%. Looking at subsamples, it does get a little bit bigger. So first, jumping into some of the broad issue questions we asked. So we asked about a series of public organizations and individuals in the city.
Cardio burns fat, right? No. Cardio actually burns.
We saw, sorry, I was pausing because I thought there was a question. We saw
Somebody
overall
needs to mute.
that the city workers had a high favorability, generally net positive views of city government. And then some of the individuals and individual organizations we asked about were lesser known. Those gray bars kind of tell us people who have never heard of an organization. So whether it was the Rise Youth Center or ACE, those were kind of a little bit less known than some other city organizations. We also asked about concern about a lack of funding for city services and cuts to services that are caused by the pandemic's impact on the economy. And we saw that 71% of voters told us they were extremely or very concerned, with 35% extremely concerned, 19% somewhat concerned, and only 9% were not too concerned. We also asked them about their own personal financial situation in the next few months, whether they felt confident or uneasy about their own ability to meet their living expenses. Fully 1/3 said that they felt uneasy about their personal financial situation. And it'll come at no surprise that when we took a look in the crosstabs at who was telling us they were feeling uneasy, it was tend to be more low-income voters were more uneasy. So getting into the actual measures, before I kind of show you the language we tested and the results, a quick run through of how we approached this. So we tested 3 measures, as Jim noted: a gross receipts tax, a vacant property tax, and a real estate transfer tax. Respondents heard these in a random order up front, and then whichever one they heard first, we then asked a bunch of follow-up questions about, and it was structured this way to kind of minimize confusion, but still be able to test all 3 and the potential of different combinations on the ballot. This is the ballot language that we tested for the gross receipts tax. We test the 75-word ballot question up front because it's the one piece of information that we know that every voter who casts a ballot will have and so that kind of is the minimum information that everyone will have when they're voting. And this one has a 50% threshold for passage. So looking at the results, what we saw here was that 2/3 offered support for the gross receipts tax. Whether it was presented first or presented after the other measures didn't really impact support. So that told us that not only was there a pretty good margin starting off at the beginning above that 50% threshold, but that if people knew there were other things on the ballot locally, it didn't really affect how they viewed the gross receipts tax. This is the vacant property tax language, and this had a higher threshold. It had a 2/3 threshold. And as you'll see here, when presented first, it kind of neared that 2/3 threshold, but when there are other measures on the ballot, it didn't really reach 2/3. And then finally, the real estate transfer tax. And this one also had a 50% threshold, has a little bit of a buffer, not quite as much as the gross receipts tax, and also generates, it's worth noting that it generates less revenue than the gross receipts tax. But overall, it starts off kind of above that threshold, regardless of the order in which voters heard it. So the next section kind of covers some of the proposed spending areas. So we tested a pretty long list, and this spans a few slides, of different ways that funds from this measure could be used for city programs. And we asked voters to tell us how important each priority was, whether it was extremely important, very important, somewhat important, or not too important. So there on the right is the percentage who says they're extremely or very important, and these are ranked by that amount. As you can see here, ensuring that kids have access to clean drinking water, providing after school and summer programs, improving healthcare for kids, maintaining fire protection, providing safe routes to school for children, and providing job training and academic support for youth. These were kind of the very top tier items, very high priority for voters. The list continues here. These are also very important. You have more than 3/4 of voters saying these items were extremely or very important to them, and these included attracting and retaining local jobs and businesses, providing early childhood education, maintaining fire equipment, providing violence prevention programs, keeping Richmond affordable, maintaining parks, and maintaining emergency response times. The next slide here, these are items that overall are still very important to voters. Definitely, you have about 70% or more saying they're extremely or very important, but you're starting to see that intensity, that extremely important, go down a little bit. So these are, supporting local businesses, preparing city facilities for earthquakes, fires, and other natural disasters, improving quality of life. The one item here that maybe the overall importance isn't quite as high as the items that I covered earlier, but does have a lot of intensity, is providing services for people experiencing homelessness. There you had almost half saying that was an extremely important item for them. And then this is the last slide in this series. And what you see here is these are kind of the items that, are not seen as urgent, even though majorities will tell us from almost all of them say that these are extremely or very important to them. I will flag that the one at the bottom there, the reducing local traffic congestion, that is an item that we have been seeing kind of drop off in importance throughout the Bay Area and throughout the state. People are not on the roads. It's not a problem that they're dealing quite as much as they were before the pandemic. So that is one of the few issues that's kind of dropped off a little bit. So getting into the exchange of messaging and how support fluctuated. So it's worth noting that the way the survey was structured was early on, we asked about the support for the different versions of, or the different measures. And then we talked about the different ways the money could be spent. And then we did a stress test of some of reasons that would be good to support the measure and the things that they would go towards, and then criticisms of the measures. And so starting with the gross receipts tax, we see that as we did this stress test, voters were responsive to the messaging, but throughout the exchange of information, support stayed above that 50% threshold. And there was a nice buffer, more than the margin of error between the 50% threshold and the level of support. It's worth noting that, we did test the positive information before the critical information. So definitely the critical information might be a little bit more impactful in isolation, but that just, but it is worth noting that, even in this situation, we're above 50% throughout and people are responding to that positive information. When we're looking at the vacant property tax, this is a bit of a different situation because the threshold for passage is higher and that 2/3 bar is just so much harder for measures in general. It does exceed it after you positives alone, and as soon as people are exposed to anything critical, the support drops back down below the 67%. And finally, for the transfer tax, here we're steadily above that 50%, same dynamic of, some fluidity, some responsiveness to messaging. It's worth noting that after information, that's not shown on this slide, but the percentage who were a definite yes started to soften a little bit on the transfer tax. So whereas support for the gross receipts tax was more solid throughout. And this slide just shows some of the positive themes that we tested. So these are not the full messages, but these are just kind of the themes that the messages covered. And as you'll see here, they're ranked by the percentage very convincing. The top messages were ones that talked about investment in kids first initiative, maintaining police and emergency 911 response, and then the idea that the gross receipts tax would really hold businesses accountable and involve them in giving back to the community. And so those three themes kind of stood out the most as most resonant in terms of supporting the measure. So finally, the conclusion slide, I'll just quickly wrap up, not to kind of reiterate everything that I just said, but because the slide kind of does. But I think the core takeaways here really are that the gross receipts tax is in good shape. It appears viable. As I just noted, it's responsive to positive messaging, and criticisms don't push it below that 50% threshold. The transfer tax on the whole is in a similar situation, but support is a little softer, and it's worth noting that it does generate less revenue. And unfortunately, the vacant property tax instead isn't just not viable. That 2/3 threshold is really tough overall. So the gross receipts tax is the one that is kind of best positioned at this point in time. I don't have to mention it, but I do, that a poll is a snapshot of a moment in time, and we are living through a pandemic and an economic crisis. So while we have a really strong and solid starting point of this, and pretty confident in the measure's viability, we're very confident in that. We are living in a rapidly changing environment, and it has to be said that things could shift as we get closer to the election, and that the conversation around the election becomes more influential. But that just underscores the importance of kind of educating the community on the good things and the good programs that this measure would be funding. So with that, I will pass it back to the city team.
Are there?
Thank you.
Good evening, Antonio Banuelos, Finance Department, City of Richmond. So the recommended action is to review and provide direction on the proposed draft measure for the November ballot. Basically, the measure would change the business license tax from number of employees to gross receipts. The new methodology would charge highest rates on businesses with the most gross revenue. It would include some exemptions and a lower minimum tax for small businesses with gross receipts under $250,000. It is estimated to generate at least $4.9 million in additional revenue. Based on City Council's feedback, staff will return with the final proposed ballot measure at next week's meeting. A little overview on the gross receipts. The financial impact will depend on what model we follow. For the new revenue generated above the current 3.5 million we currently get from the city of Richmond for business size. If we go with the plain Oakland model, that would mean an additional $4.9 million for the city's general fund. If we go with the Oakland hybrid model, that would mean an additional 4.9 million for the general fund. I'm sorry, 8.1 million for the general fund. I'll get into the differences in the next few slides. Also, these estimates are on the lower end of the range and do not include projections stemming from business licenses that provide and sell services. Additionally, any new revenue will not be received by the city until fiscal year 21-22. Also, there's a cost to implement. First of all, there's an election cost, which will at least be $10,000. And if it gets adopted, possible software cost and additional staffing might be needed because of the complexity of the new ordinance. So this is the proposed language. If approved, is actual text that will show up on the November 3rd ballot. Currently, the base rate for the current model that we use is $234 for most businesses. The rate goes up based on number of employees. For the first 25 employees, they're taxed at the rate of $46.80 per employee. And any employee above that 25 is taxed at $40.10 per employee. Some businesses currently do pay based on gross receipts. For example, marijuana businesses pay at the rate of 5%. Also, movie theaters pay at the rate of 0.3% for revenues over 20,000. Also, although about 75% of the businesses currently expire on December 31st day. The license is issued on an anniversary basis. So if you get a license today, July 21st, it will expire July 20th currently. Okay. The model we have proposed is almost copied after City of Oakland's proposed ordinance. It is a progressive tax, and the tax rate changes based on the size of the business. There are different business categories with different rates for each class. Most businesses under 250,000 gross receipts pay the base rate of $100. They would pay. Exemptions are currently included in the ordinance. Additionally, council will have flexibility to decrease rates, change the start date, or add additional exemptions in the future if it wished. This is a summary chart explaining the different types of businesses and the corresponding tiers and rates. We have 11 business classes and 5 business size tiers. Let me give you a couple of examples of how this might pan out. In the first example, let's use a restaurant with 15 employees and with a yearly gross receipts totaling $2.3 million. Under the current Richmond tax structure, they pay $1,685 for a year. Under the proposed gross tax receipt structure, they would fall in Class A for retail sales and in the tier of 1 million to 2.5 million. Their tax rate for the revenue above 1 million would be 0.1%. Their total tax for the year would have to come out to be around $2,060. I'm sorry, $2,060. In the second example, let's use a beauty salon with 1 employee, and their gross receipts turns out to be $235,000 per year. Currently, under the current structure, they pay $280.90. Under the proposed gross receipts tax structure, they would pay $100 per year. For rental properties, the current model in the city of Richmond is based on location. All properties get charged $234.10 per location. Doesn't matter if it's a single family dwelling or a 100-unit apartment complex. If we go to the Oakland model, all properties are charged at 1.95% of gross receipts. If we go with the Berkeley model, for example, which is tiered and based on number of rental properties that's owned. If a property owner has 4 or less properties, the rate is 1.081 of gross receipts. If the property owner has 5 or more properties, the rate is 2.881. And let me give you a couple of examples here. So let's say we have a single family dwelling. The property owner owns that building. They rent it out for $1,500 a month. Currently, under the Richmond tax, is $234.10 per year. Under the Berkeley tiered model, with different rates, it would be $194 per year. Under the Oakland model, it would be $351 per year. As opposed, let's do another example, 10-unit apartment complex, also at the same rate per unit. Currently in Richmond, they would also pay the $234.10. Under the Berkeley model, that would be $5,186. Under the Oakland model, $3,510. As mentioned previously, there are several exemptions. More importantly, if it has to do with the flexibility that it allows, the way the ordinance is set up has a flexibility built in that allows the city council to add additional exemptions without the need to go back to the voters for a second time. Based on your direction tonight, staff may return next Tuesday with the necessary updated documents for city council to consider placing the measure on the ballot. Any questions or comments?
Are there questions from council members?
Yeah, I have a question about the ability to add exemptions. I understand how it might not be possible to take exemptions away since it would be voted by the people, but exemptions added by the city council, would we have the ability to take them away if we saw that those exemptions weren't working?
That's a good question. The way the ordinance is worded doesn't address that type of situation, but if you were to take exemptions away, then that would be akin to increasing taxes, and that would require voter approval. So I think once you have exemptions baked in there, they're in there. It's just the council can't increase taxes in any way, and that includes taking away exemptions that otherwise exist.
Okay, so I didn't hear a word you said because you froze, but in one word, answer, is it yes or no?
You can't, once they're in, you can't take them away.
Can I ask the question a little bit differently? If you allow the council to put exemptions in place, don't have any specific exemptions built in.
Excuse me, it seems like the internet doesn't want me to get the answer. So could I get it in writing as a text later on?
Yes.
Thank you.
If the ordinance language allows the council to create exemptions, but doesn't specify any upfront, would they be able to add and take away exemptions in the future, or only add?
I would need to look into that further, but my initial take is that once there are exemptions in there, they can't be taken away because that increases the taxes, and an increase of the taxes would require voter approval, regardless of whether it's part of the original initiative or if it's or if it's a council imposed exemption.
I got a question, Mr. Mayor. While I appreciate the extensive work done by the various members of this group, my question is, this affect greatly the business community, and I wanted to know to what extent were the Council of Richmond Industries and the Richmond Chamber of Commerce included in your research and formulating this various tax, which is directly upon many of them.
Who wants to answer that?
Could Lift Up Richmond address that? Antonio, based on the work that the group has done, do you have an answer?
Oh, hi, it's Jim Ross with Lift Up Oakland, and while we did not specifically reach out to either of those business organizations, as I stated before, this legislation is modeled on progressive business taxes in communities throughout the region, most of which were put together and developed with strong business input and development on that. So this is something that's pretty standard compared to other places. Lift Up Oakland, we kind of gave you the Lift Up Richmond, we gave you the kind of the group that was involved, but this ordinance is based off of legislation that was developed in San Francisco and in Oakland and in other communities where the business community was very, very closely involved in that process.
I just don't understand why you did not include the two businesses in Richmond. What happens in San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley is one thing, but out of respect, just getting their input and making them aware, and they may have had some tweaks that they could have been quite valuable in you formulating your final recommendation.
Okay.
The other one is going to be affected. The other one is going to have to pay, and I don't understand why they were not included.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear from both of them tonight.
To clarify, we were just included just now. We as the city council were just now included into the discussion. So this is for direction, right? That's what this item is about.
Right.
Okay, just to get that clear.
Are there other questions? Okay, I'm sure we have speakers.
Yes. Okay. And just for the record, comments received by 3 o'clock today, 2 comments received in support of the item, 1 comment received in opposition of the item, and 1 comment received encouraging the city council to provide businesses time to review the ordinance. We have 2 callers and we have 1 comment to read into the record. And we're going to go to our callers.
I have Ilana Clark on the line. Ilana, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. My name is Ilana Clark. I've been a Richmond resident for 20 years now, and before then, Oakland. Raising taxes on businesses discourages them from staying in Richmond. I'm sure you've all heard that before. I want you to really consider how you support or undermine your ability, our ability to provide housing in Richmond. We are one of the big groups of small businesses in Richmond. If you vote for this, I encourage you, strongly encourage you to exempt all housing. Other businesses may legally pass some of the increased cost of this on to customers. However, under Richmond's rent control, housing providers may not pass on any of the cost to renters. You may dismiss this concern as most small-time housing providers don't meet the $250,000 threshold. But as the presenter stated, this tax may be lowered at any time. It may also be raised, or the threshold on gross receipts may be changed. Do not pass this tax as written. At least exempt all housing providers, big and small, for your housing provider's sake and for the renter's sake. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My next caller is Katrinka Ruck. Katrinka, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, City Manager, and staff. I'm Katrinka Ruck. I'm speaking on behalf of the Council of Industries and other businesses located in Richmond. We're hoping that, and we believe that the businesses in the city need more time to review the economic impact this change in business tax will have on our businesses. We hope that you would look at other cities other than Oakland and San Francisco that are more equal to what we provide in Richmond, and set up a committee to thoroughly review these issues prior to committing to a ballot measure. The City of Oakland has determined that they needed more time to review the economic impact and determine the fair rate increases. So they did remove the ordinance for the November ballot, and they created a blue ribbon committee to review this. After speaking with many Richmond businesses, many of which are not COI members, I'd like clarification, and it doesn't have to be now, but on various issues. One, if you look at the draft ordinance and then you look at the other material provided, the agenda review and the attachment, it's causing confusion because the classes and the rates are not the same. So it's difficult in coming up with a calculation. Secondly, businesses who have calculated their potential rates under the draft ordinance found that their business tax would grow 3 times, some 4 times, and one even 70 times more than what they're paying now. It's unfortunate, and I appreciate Mr. Banuelos' presentation, but manufacturing and retail sales were not included in the examples. One business currently pays $3,000, and their new rate is going to be $70,000. Another business today calculated that they currently pay $500, and perhaps that might be too low, but the new rate would push them to $13,000. Now that's 1/3 of their net profits. Now reminding you that gross receipts and net profits are 2 different things. Thirdly, businesses that fall into several classifications, for example, retail and wholesale, or perhaps they have manufacturing, retail, and wholesale on site, or an administrative office in retail. There's no guidance in the ordinance which tells a business how do you calculate that. And then fourth, the money that's derived from the ballot measure does not go to specific programs, and we should not trick the voters into thinking it does. It goes into a general fund, which is then determined by the city council as to how it will be distributed. Unfortunately, several of the businesses I spoke with stated that if the current rates were to pass, they would highly consider relocating from Richmond. They even said due to the pandemic, their employees don't even work in their offices. So for them to move their office out of Richmond would be something they would highly consider. So we ask you to take a look at
Your
these
time has expired. Thank you, Katrinka.
consideration.
That was my last caller.
Okay, we have one.
This comment is from Paul Ibanez. As a small business owner with operations in Richmond, I and my partners are vehemently opposed to the gross receipts tax proposal change being proposed for the November ballot and up for discussion on tonight's city council meeting. The proposed change to the tax rate would have a significant negative impact on our ability to maintain operations in the city of Richmond. Our lease for our current facility in Richmond is up in December of this year, And if the gross receipts tax proposal were to go into effect, it is very likely we would seriously consider not renewing our lease for the same property for any property in the city of Richmond. Omega Pacific has had a very long and successful local business relationship with the city of Richmond, and we would hate to have it come to an end over this proposed tax change. I'm available for public comment via telephone if necessary.
And that's the end of public comment.
I had a question for Mr. Atencio. If a landlord has an increased tax based on this, would it be possible to allow a recovery of that in a rent-controlled property?
I believe by the operation of the rent control statute, it's not recoverable under the statute. I think the landlord could appeal to the board and seek the recovery, but there's no mechanism under the rent control statute. I don't know, Rachel, if you want to speak to that further, but that was my reading of it.
I guess what I'm saying, could this also amend the rent control law so that a landlord could recover that extra tax?
No, I don't believe it can. I think rent control was also a voter initiative, so that would in turn require a voter.
Can't one voter initiative amend another?
That one's also not a tax. It's a different sort of scheme with a fee. I think they're two separate issues that would need to be addressed separately. Although
the initiative has to cover one subject as well. Sorry.
Well, okay. Are there other questions? So I guess we could, this item calls for direction from the council. We could either take a vote to start moving it to the ballot. We could provide direction and talk about it again next time it comes up.
I'll make a motion to direct staff to draft resolution for the November 3rd, 2020 ballot, which would amend city's business tax rate structure to authorize the city tax business based on the range recommended by staff.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I wanted to speak against the motion.
Okay.
I don't know if we've been watching the news, but this COVID-19 is putting a different perspective with respect to how people work and don't work. There are a lot of tech companies in the Silicon Valley and in San Francisco that are now allowing people to stay home and work without coming into the job. I know even my son and my daughters don't come in, and we've seen with our city employees, many of them don't come in, but they still perform. And I think we're opening up a can of worms when we throw these businesses taxes on the individual companies. And the next thing you're gonna find out, they can just move out of the city and go somewhere else. And I don't like the idea that we don't include the very businesses that are affected, and especially the small businesses and the Chamber of Commerce and the Council of Richmond Industry. So I can't support something by shoving it down their throat and they're not even included. And if it's true what Mrs. Ruck has indicated, some of these companies are going to be really taxed out of the business. And I don't know how you react and respond to that by forcing people out of your city. So I can't support that concept.
Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, I most definitely, having to say the gross tax receipt, I understand the progressive tax reform movement, and also but then also understanding how policy is done. I would have to agree with Councilmember Bates in the sense that our community, our business community, which isn't as strong as Oakland's, but we're basing it off of their business community engagement. I don't think it's conducive to what we're trying to do here in the city of Richmond and the kind of policy that I pride myself on voting for. I would most definitely like to see staff and, you know, the coalition reach out to Ms. Ruck as well as the other business communities, so that way it's not hitting them over the head and it's more conducive to what we have going on in Richmond. Because when you look at Berkeley, Oakland, and San Francisco, they did their job, like in terms of engaging their business community. And so saying that we're basing ours off of the engagement that they did when our business community isn't as strong as theirs, coupled with the COVID situation and people already trying to lay folks off for any reason, we give businesses a reason to lay folks off by increasing taxes on them. I just think there's a little bit more work that needs to be done. Like, and I'm not saying that we need to take a whole month or we need to take the whole month of August. It's honestly work that should have been done before you guys brought this to us tonight. So that's why I'm going to have to abstain from voting for the motion, because I understand where everyone's coming from, but the way we're coming, we're supposed to be professionals, and that's just not the professional way to do things. In my opinion, I'm not trying to down nobody and how y'all move. That's just that's my opinion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm just curious. I mean, I think Councilmember Johnson makes a good point. And I'm wondering if there's a way to accommodate that in the time frame, because I think if we're going to get this on the ballot for 2020, it has to, we've got to pass it on July 30th. So I'm wondering from staff, is there any way to accommodate this process and while not missing that deadline? Or if Councilmember Johnson has a suggestion about how to go forward.
Yeah, I think LaShonda is trying to speak, but absolutely, yes. We can be working with the groups over the next week or so. And if the council still isn't comfortable or has additional questions, you have an option for a special meeting in August, but we do have an August 7th deadline to put this on the ballot. And just to remind everybody of the larger context, we have been looking at quite a number of different revenue sources. And these are ones, you know, to budget our balance. We've always wanted to look at a combination of revenue measures,
right,
as well as budget reductions. And so this is part of that whole bigger package of trying to get to a point where ultimately we all hope to have a structurally balanced budget. And we've had clear direction from the council to move forward on some revenue measures in conjunction with the labor groups, with the hope that it minimizes impact on staff. So we have been letting the labor groups lead this per your direction, and we can do a lot better outreach over the next week or so. But right now there is only one more meeting scheduled for council.
Right.
Prior to the deadline.
And to answer your question, JL, I don't have a roadmap for staff. I wish I did. However, I am committed to any additional meetings or special meetings that we have to have.
Okay.
I know y'all might get mad at me for saying this, but it's COVID, it's August. I'm not going anywhere. So
right. Yeah, no,
I'll
that's fine. I mean, based on what the city manager said, I think I'll amend my motion just to direct staff to reach out to Council of Industries and engage the business community over the course of the next week before they bring it back to us. And I would also say, you know, if it looks like that process doesn't happen within the week, I'm open to a special meeting in August as well, to get this done if that's necessary. So I'll amend my motion.
I'm open to a special meeting as well in August, if need be. Just putting it out there. I'd prefer to. I understand both concerns. Personally, it's a double-edged sword. I've just basically picked a side that I'm on this double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. But if more things need to happen in this process, you know, I'm willing to do the work.
And I appreciate you guys for accommodating me on that too.
Absolutely. So I'll amend my motion to say that, so that we direct staff to work with the business community, specifically Council of Industries, and over the course of the next week, and then hopefully bring it back to us in a week. But if, you know, conversations are still going on and we need to do it as a special meeting in early August, we can do that as well.
Great. And can I also clarify, we had two different options that were presented tonight, one based on the Oakland model and one based on the Berkeley model. Based on the feedback I'm hearing, I'm interpreting, and inferring that you all would like us to proceed with the Oakland model, which has less impact on businesses. And if
Yes.
that's true, then I want to clarify that in the motion so we can move forward with just that one option.
Well, the motion was staff's recommendation, and I can't remember if staff recommended.
We didn't
either
recommend
option.
between the two.
Okay, so I mean, I guess based on the conversation, let's go with the Oakland model.
I'm still amenable to that.
You're only talking about rental properties, right?
No, it's all
So
business.
the other model, it has a different formula, and it looks like Antonio might be able to correct me but it has a different formula primarily on rental property.
I was going to say, isn't the Oakland model like flat, whereas the Berkeley one is incremental and it has steps to it? Or is that inverse?
The Berkeley model in reference to rental property had different tiers based on number of properties that you own. So if you own 5 or more property, it was a higher rate. If you have 4 or less properties, a lower rate. And just in reference to rental properties.
Weren't you guys recommending a hybrid model?
That's the hybrid model. Basically, the Oakland model for most businesses and the Berkeley component to the rental properties.
Oh, okay.
That's reasonable.
Staff wasn't recommending a specific model. We were just showing you alternatives if there was a desire to increase revenue. So if you go with the Oakland model, as our ordinance is currently written, it gives you the parameters for a certain revenue. If you wanted to increase revenue, then we could change a portion of the ordinance and substitute it for the Berkeley model.
Well, the whole purpose of this is to raise revenue. So anyway, so I understand the motion is to continue working on this and bring it back at the next meeting. And who was the seconder for this?
I have a question. Does the motion include the special session?
Wait a minute, who was the seconder? I've forgotten.
Willis.
The motion was by Mark and the seconder was
Willis. Seconded by Willis.
Willis. Okay, so do you agree to the amended motion? Willis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now,
Yes,
Eduardo.
Yeah, so does this motion include a special session?
So I didn't include it as part of the motion. I said if necessary. I mean, I basically said I'm open to one if necessary. I didn't include it as part of the motion. The motion was just to work with business and bring it back next week. But if they're not ready next week, I mean, I don't know. I'm happy to include that in the motion if we want to do that.
So we could bring it back to you next week and you all could decide at that time if you wanted to.
Let's formalize this as little as possible, because the thing on the table is giving direction to staff, which we are doing. The more we formalize it, the more we seem like we passed it last week.
Okay,
All right, so let's keep this open.
But
I think we need to take a vote.
All right, let's vote.
Vice Mayor Bates,
Yes.
Councilmember Choi,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
yes.
Councilmember Myrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
and Mayor Butt.
Yes.
The vote is unanimous.
So the model is still open?
You
Is
said
that
the
correct?
model? So I think
Yes.
what I'm hearing from council members is that we are moving forward with the Oakland model as we have conversations with the business community.
Okay, well, we didn't vote on the model, so can we agree to continue to explore both models?
We just voted on the Oakland model. Proceed with the Oakland model.
Oh.
That was part of the motion.
That was in the language?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the motion, Councilmember Myrick.
I'm sorry. There was confusion about the motion?
As the seconder, I will say, yes, we decided to go with the Oakland model to reach out to businesses within a week, and if need be, have a special meeting if we need further conversations, but particular outreach be done with the Council of Industries. That was pretty much the motion.
That was it.
Got it.
Okay, all right. That's done. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda, except for reports of office.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, we have item I2.
Have what?
We have item I2 and item G10.
We got some theater.
Oh.
Item I2 is.
Dale,
Oh, you're right.
there's no need to create theater by claiming there is.
Okay, item I2 is to amend the fiscal year 2021 budget to reduce the Office of Neighborhood Safety budget by $2 neighborhood change agents in the amount of $227,694 and vote to apply the funding to the overall budget reduction.
So Councilmember Martinez or Vice Mayor Bates, would one of you like to introduce this?
Yeah, I would like to introduce it, and I'd like to explain why I submitted this item and why I'm now going to ask to postpone the consideration. At the council meeting on June 30th, some of us made the point that we would not vote for a budget that was based on furloughs for the lower paid city workers. The lower paid city workers could not afford those kinds of cuts in their income and did not have the opportunity to for savings to cushion them. As you recall, the city council then voted to eliminate all furloughs from our plans and resolve the budget with cutting overtime. Since that time, the city has again pressed the unions for concessions along the lines of option C, across the board furloughs. I'm not for that, and I will not support that approach to balance the budget. But if the city is going to put furloughs back on the table, then it is only fair that we put back on the table the freezing of all hiring in order to protect the city workers currently working. At the same time, I want you to understand that I fully support the intent of the motion to strengthen and expand ONS. I fully support the movement in Richmond to reimagine policing. That is to find alternative ways of handling tasks assigned to the police and policies that will make Richmond safer by preventing the problems that generate the need for police action. If we had not taken away the furloughs or started having discussions about taking away the furloughs, I would not have placed this on the budget, because this is basically taking away jobs that are already there and replacing it with jobs that aren't there. All these jobs are necessary. So hopefully in a short time, we will have reports and proposed actions by the commission to look into alternatives for policing. As far as I'm concerned, the council has adopted the position of taking furloughs off the table as voted in open session. And as long as it continues to be the case that furloughs for lower paid workers is not part for any proposed solution pursued by the city, I am willing to withhold this item about freezing hiring. When we get to the report from the commission looking into Richmond policing, then we can consider how much we would strengthen the ONS and what resources we should shift. So I am asking for this item to be continued until we are able to vote on the budget.
That was a long walk back.
Vice Mayor Bates, do you agree with that?
Well, it was a necessary walk back, and it was a walk back because people didn't seem to understand that by moving money, that was.
I'm glad you're here. All I said, it was long, brother. I'm glad you're here.
Wait a minute, Council. Let me, Vice Mayor Bates, do you agree with taking this off the agenda tonight?
Well, my colleague, Mr. Bernie Martinez, threw me a curve there. I was under the impression that we were going to rely upon the city manager as
do him like you did me.
As relates to the process. But without further ado, I agree to take it off, and let's study it later. I see some impatience with my colleagues. They ready to go home. They're already home. They're ready to go to sleep, I guess. So
I love y'all.
I go ahead and concur with my colleague.
Okay, that takes care of that. Next item, J.
Was the item removed or withdrawn?
It's removed for now. If they want to put it back, they can do it later.
Okay, so we're going to item G10. Item G10 is to approve an appointment.
I thought we took G10 off.
It got carried over to the next meeting.
I removed it.
Oh, you removed it. Okay, so you're going to continue it to?
No, I'm not. It's just off.
Okay, so it's withdrawn.
Not happening.
Withdrawn, yeah, for the time being.
All right, so we go to item J, reports of officers, referrals to staff, and general reports, including AB 1234 reports.
Are there any?
I got a quick report after my colleagues have a report on their attendance of meetings and so forth. I just want a personal privilege to have a couple of statements, Mr. Mayor.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, I would like to have a meeting adjourned in honor of two icons, civil rights leaders, Mr. John L. Lewis.
You're doing an adjournment report, right?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. We can do that. And then I've got
John Lewis. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. John L. Lewis and Cardi Tinsdale Vivian. Both were outstanding civil rights leaders. I had the fortune of being acquainted with Mr. Lewis after I was elected in 1967, and he was elected in 1981 as a council member in Atlanta, Georgia. And at the National League of Cities, we had a group called NBC Leo, which was basically all Black elected officials. And he was a leader there. And within 5 years, he's elevated himself to Congress. But I think that he's another Martin Luther King protege that has made a tremendous contribution to this country, especially in the nonviolent aspect. And I just want to, this council to recognize and pay our respect and condolences to his family for a really great individual who worked with both Republicans, independent, and Democrats. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that opportunity.
Here, here.
Yes.
Well said.
Well put. I want to drop back to announcements. You know, given the level of interest in the Veolia issue, there's going to be a mediation in September, and I'm going to appoint up to 3 council members who might want to go and observe it. So if you're interested, would you just send me an email and tell me you're interested, and we'll figure it out from there.
Don't do it if you got money from them, y'all.
Any other AB 1234 announcements or anything? Okay. Any other adjournment announcements?
Yes. A colleague of mine died of the COVID-19 on Sunday. His name is Jose Ornelas, who was a council member from the city of San Joaquin. He was born in Mexico, came to the United States with his father, became naturalized, and worked his way up to being a city council member and representing the city, who continues to have a problem of water, safe, drinkable water, which was something that he worked on. So he was gracious, soft-spoken, but very powerful in terms of his advocacy for the people that he represented. So my heart goes out to his family and his children.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, in that case, this meeting is adjourned. What? Somebody had something? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Enjoy your evening.
And the time is 8:44.